Hey, everybody, good morning and welcome to the Lioness Den. We are here today for this very important conversation. Forgive us for being a little behind this morning, a few technical difficulties with mics and cameras, but God is good and we are here. This morning is going to be great. I want to tell you, you are in for a treat. Uh, Gut health is something that we all need to know about. And so we have been so blessed to get Miss Paula Littlejohn and Miss Tammy Saunders to come in and to talk to us about gut health. Now, I want you to sit back, relax, put your seatbelts on, think of the questions you may have. If you want to chat with us, please do so through the comments, and we are happy to see you today. Let's get this party started. Welcome to the Lioness Den again. Again, today we are talking about gut health with Miss Tammy Saunders and Paula Littlejohn. I'm going to introduce them to you now. So here we go. Good morning, Tammy and Paula.
Good morning, sweetie.
I'm so happy that you are here. If you could tell us a little bit about yourselves, for a moment, and then we'll get into the meat of the subject. Tammy, we can start with you.
Okay, good morning. I am Tammy Saunders. I am an LPN. Have been so for
I think we're having an issue with Tammy's sound. Looks like it blinked out for a second.
Can you hear me, darling?
Yes, you're back.
Okay. Okay. I am a repeat offender to coming to the Lioness Den, and I'm excited about that. I hope we have a great. I believe that we're going to have a great conversation today.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Paula?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Paula Littlejohn. I am a PhD candidate in microbiology and immunology. I have a wealth of experience in nutrition research, public health, pharmaceutical research, wide range of everything. And I love talking about health. I love science communication, and I love God. And it is a pleasure to be here today to talk about our gut health and how we can do better by understanding better.
Yes, 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 yes. So, as I told you before we started, and on text message and everywhere else, for me, this is going to be like a session on gut health for dummies. I have no idea of how gut health is really supposed to work, and this is such a treat for me just to be able to learn this information today, and for our audience to learn this information today. So, Paula, take us in. That's what I'll say.
Right. So, since Lydia says it's be gut health for, I would say, what you don't know. I won't say dummies. We'll start at the very beginning and just talk about the gut. So, what comprises the gut? When we think about the gut, we think about there's our stomach. So that's the upper part, and then we have this really long tube afterwards, and that long tube is called our small intestine and then our large intestine. And our small intestine is separated into three parts. I won't give you the official name because it's not important, but there's an upper part, there's a middle section that comprises like the bulk of it, and then there is an end section, and then then it goes to the large intestine. And so the small intestine is about 22 to 25 feet long, and it's wrapped around in our stomach. So you think about that as is pretty long. And then each section that I just mentioned has different roles. And so the first section is involved in like right after our food comes into our stomach, the acid in there breaks it down and it begins to secrete different hormones. So secrete means it just makes hormones into those spaces. And then they start digesting and breaking our food down. And then it gets into this first section of our small intestine. So this is the upper part right after the stomach. And then in this section, what it does, it produces hormones. It puts more of these different enzymes there to begin to break the food down a little bit more. Some of these enzymes come from our liver, some come from our bile, and then our gallbladder, sorry, and then it begins to break it down. And then this part absorbs certain nutrients, so like mostly our fat. Soluble nutrients. So your vitamin A, your vitamin D, your vitamin E, and your vitamin K are all absorbed in this first part. And then this section also has like very little bacteria in it because it's a little bit more, it's not hospitable for the microbes. Then we get to the second section. And the second section is more involved in like absorbing sugars, amino acids, your fatty acids. It absorbs more of the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, carbohydrates, the fats, the proteins, the water that's in the food gets absorbed more in this area. And it is the longest section of the small intestine. And then it has these circular folds and these little things that stick out like fingers. So we call them villi. And then on these fingers, they have other fingers called microvilli. And basically what this does, it increases the surface area. So this is just really how amazing God is. Like, in order for us to take full advantage of absorbing everything, he made these little villi, these finger-like protrusions on our small intestine so it can absorb more nutrients. And so that's basically what these villi do. They just create more space from a smaller space so that they can absorb more nutrients, and that's their role. And then we get to this third section, which is a shorter section of our small intestine, right before we get to the large intestine, which is the colon. And this helps to further break down anything else that's left. It's a little bit, has less oxygen in this area. And so we'll see a little bit more of our microbiome, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And it's more involved in absorbing bile acids, remaining fluids, and also vitamin B12. And there are specific what we call transporters, nutrient transporters that actually transport B12 into the blood system, and also to that will get to other organs. And so this is basically how when we talk about gut, what it comprises of. So you have your stomach, and you have your small intestine. And then you have your large intestine, and the large intestine is called the colon. And then we have what we call proximal colon, means like its upper part. And then we have a distal colon, which is the lower part. And then it goes to our anus. And then in this colon is where we have all of these gut microbiome, which I'll get into a little bit more later. But one of the things I want to tell that you probably don't know is that there's only a single line of cells that separate us from the environment. And so what I mean is that in our small intestine, we just have one layer of cells. And then there on top of that layer is a thin layer of mucus. And then from that, the microbiome and then everything else. So this is all that we have to protect us from the onslaughts of everything that we eat, things that we breathe, that it comes down and ends up in our digestive system. That's all that we have to protect us. But our bodies are just so unique that 70% of our immune system is in our gut. And when we say 70% of our immune system, we're like, well, what is that? Like, what is the immune system? So our immune system basically comprises of cells. So our immune cells. So you have our B cells, our T cells, you have our neutrophils, our dendritic cells, all of these different cell types. They live in the lower part. So below this, so very low down into our small intestine, in the area called the lamina propria. And it's not important to know those names, but it's just where the immune cells live. And basically they do surveillance. And so they have, some of the cells have like these very long arms, and they kind of go out sort of like a submarine, and it kind of like looks out what's going on in the area, and it samples it takes samples basically from what's out there, brings it back down to the immune system, and then it kind of communicates and say, hey, something is going on. We see a large amount of this out there, or we don't have enough of this. And so we need to then, call in the brigade. We need to have like an immune response. And so when people say 70% of the immune system is in our intestine, because it's just a thin layer separating us from the environment, you can appreciate and understand why we need that, because that's all we have. And so if anything is going to come in, it's going to come in through our gut. And so we need that protection. The other part that I want to mention is that 500 million Neurons, so these are cells that you normally find like in your brain, are also in your gut. And so this explains why we say, your gut, the gut and the food and the mood, like your food influences your mood. Is because you have these neurons that send signals up to the brain via like this nerve that connects to your brain called the vagus nerve. And so this vagus nerve is what we consider the gut brain axis. And so this is why when we eat certain foods, we kind of feel a certain way, not just in our stomach, but we also it affects our moods. It's because these cells are also in our gut. They line our gut, and then they're sending signals back and forth all the time, communicating back and forth. So then I want to jump into the gut microbiome, which you probably have heard of at some point, and you're probably wondering like, oh, what is this thing? So in order to extend our metabolism or our metabolic capacity, so how we digest food, how we absorb nutrients, we have these microbes, these bacteria and viruses and fungus and parasites and different things that live inside our gut. We have them at different sites on our bodies as well, but today we're not talking about that. We're just specifically focusing on the ones in our gut. And so we have these microbes, and they're called gut microbiome. And although we pretty much only study the bacteria, and so it plays a role in food digestion, immune system development. So remember when I talked about that immune cell that can put up this little, we call a dendrite, can put this up in the environment to survey it. That also is how our bodies train our immune system at birth. In that early age, it kind of sends out these little dendrites. They present it back to our bodies, and our body's able to identify this is self. This is not a foreign thing. So this is okay. It gives it a green check mark. Don't attack this if you see it. And then that's how we're able to have like a really good immune system and live with these microbes. And we're not in constant war, and our bodies aren't reacting to it. And so when someone has like an autoimmune disorder, it's because their bodies have identified something as non-self, and then it attacks it. But this is how it is trained. So your gut microbiome plays a role in training your immune system as it's developing. And then it also acts as a barrier protection. So you have like trillions of microbes. So these are trillions of microbes in your gut. And so they also protect you. So if a pathogen comes in, you eat something that has like a bacteria, it has to go through these trillions of bacteria in order to get to these cells that I talked about, that thin layer, and then get into your body. And so they are there to help protect us. They aid in proper digestion of certain food components, such as fibers. Like our bodies, we don't possess the genes to break down fibers. And so our microbiome actually does that for us. So they take the fiber that we can't digest, it comes in, and then they eat it, and then we like to make jokes and say they poop it out, and they make something else that our bodies can then absorb. And so they give that to like the cells in our colon, and then it goes outside into different areas as well. And then our microbiome also produces two types of vitamins, vitamin B and vitamin K. And I know I mentioned earlier that we also absorb that in the upper part of our digestive system, but they also make their own in the colon. And then the bulk of our microbiome actually is in the colon. So as you come down the stomach, you start seeing like just tiny populations, and then it begins to increase more. But by the time you get to the colon, that's the bulk of where our gut microbiome is. And so that's why when we study the gut microbiome, people will ask you for like a fecal sample, a poop sample, because that's where we will study these bacteria. And then if we should weigh some interesting facts, if you should weigh your gut bacteria, it weighs about 2 kilograms, so about 5 pounds. So they say about the size of a mango. Our bacteria outnumber us about 1.3 to 1. But if we should look at their genes, like how many genes, and we all know that we have genes in our bodies, we're made up of these genes. We have like 23 million, I think, genes in the human genome, whereas bacteria is 100, they outnumber us 150 to 1. So that's how much more genes that they have compared to humans. So there's a kind of a common joke that we use in the microbiome, where we say we're more bacterial than we are humans, because we have more bacterial cells than we have human cells. And then each person's microbiome is like a unique fingerprint. So my microbiome, even if we live in the same house, if we were twins, it would be still very different than my twin sister's microbiome, even if we live in the same house, because it's very unique to each of us, and it's shaped by our different experiences, how we, interpret stress, the environments that we're placed in, the people that we're around. So even if we're living together, twins, everything that we do won't be the same. We might go to different places. We might eat something else or share foods with someone else. We might kiss different people, hopefully. And so your microbiome will change with all of that. And then, so where do we get it? So our microbiome, there's kind of a couple of debates. So right now, the common, what we commonly accept is that our microbiome starts at birth. So basically, as you're making it down the vaginal canal, the infant is then picks up these microbes, through their mouth, on their skin, and then they get the mom's microbiome. And so the baby's microbiome will be more like the mom. And so that's shaped early in life within the first 1,000 days. And probably Tammy may have mentioned that at some point, that this first 1,000 days is a very critical window in our development, and it also affects the microbiome. And then it's also our paternal and maternal factors can play a role in how our microbiomes develop. The first foods that you eat, breastfeeding versus formula-fed infants also have a very different microbiome. Breastfeeding being the best because it has these specialized human milk sugars, or what you call human milk oligosaccharides, HMOs. You probably have heard of HMOs at some point. And they are also very unique and are tailored to each infant. So there is almost like a Rubik's Cube, if you remember those things, where it kind of configures and reconfigures for each infant that you have. And even for different time points, if the infant is healthy, there's a different type of HMOs that it will get. If the infant is not feeling well, then it'll reconfigure as well to do that. The body is really smart. And so that's one of the things that we really recommend is breastfeeding within the first at least 6 months, so that your babies can have the best start as possible with their gut microbiome. And then infants that are born by C-section seem to have a different microbiome that is more, I would say, more negative. And it plays a role in how they develop. So they may be more prone to developing allergies and different things. And likewise, babies who are fed formula early in life versus breast milk also seem to have a higher or increased risk of things like allergies and asthma and increase in obesity early in life. So this early window is really, really important, and it's very important what you feed your baby and the mode of birth. And some of these things are out of our control, but as much as it is in our control, don't elect for a C-section if you don't need to. Vaginal birth is the best. Also, infections in the mom can affect how the microbiome is developed, and antibiotic use. I know we overprescribe antibiotics in North America, but that is something that is damaging to our gut microbiome. And what we've seen is that over time, we have lost species in North America. And so if you go to a country that doesn't use a lot of antibiotics, you'll see that they have a very different microbiome than we have here in North America. And I can stop there, Lydia, if you want, or I can continue with a few more things, but I want to see.
This has been already so great. There's so much that I didn't know. Okay. So, you just told me some things that I didn't know about my own kid. And so I had a C-section, and we did have some interesting things that happened, but now I know that it was probably due to having a C-section. We have some allergies that I don't have, she has. We have some different allergies, and that is kind of interesting because I didn't know why, but you kind of just told us why. So I'm like, wow, this is already I need my notepad, but I said I'll watch it later because I can't write and do this. So
yeah, it's really interesting because we don't talk about it a lot, and I have a colleague, someone I know who's an OB, and I said, do they talk about this? Why isn't the American College of Obstetrician and Gynecology talking about the gut microbiome to their patients? Because it's really important, especially during, this anaphylactic use of antibiotics. They just kind of prescribe antibiotics when you're in the hospital, just in case. But that disrupts the microbiome. it sets it off on a very negative trajectory. And when you have that early in life with children, and there's a huge study in Canada right now where they're looking at that children who have these antibiotics and delivered by C-section have an increased risk for atopic asthma. And it's just, yeah. And then you also see these kids become more obese early in life. They are more have an increased risk of becoming of having non-communicable disease such as diabetes and all these different things, cardiovascular disease. So it really plays a role in a lot of our health. And one of the things I wanted to mention is that, you know, the Greek philosopher Hippocrates said, you know, all disease starts in the gut. And there's a professor that I know, a researcher named Dr. Alicio Fasano, and he said, the gut isn't like Vegas. What happens in the gut doesn't stay in the gut. It actually goes everywhere. It's not Vegas. It goes everywhere. And so sometimes we have leakage of the microbiome of bacteria, and they go into places that they don't belong. If it ends up in the blood, you have, you know, toxic. So this is like sepsis and stuff like that. People can die from that. But it can go to like our fat cells. It can go to our liver. It can through the portal blood. It travels through the blood and it goes into all these spaces. And then we see this disease. And so the microbiome has been linked to a variety of disease, from like asthma all the way to like cancer. And so we're finding more that as we begin to look at people's guts, even Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, you know, all this cognition and different things, growth deficiency, stunting. This is one of the areas of my research, looking at how the gut plays a role in just shuttling or cutting off nutrients that goes to bone growth. And so it's really, really, you know, when we talk about our gut and we eat food and like, I like it, you really need to think that you're eating for trillions, and that's going to affect you in many ways.
So that means, wait a minute, I think Tammy's saying something.
Yeah.
Evangelist?
We received a whole bunch of stuff. Paula gave us some great, great stuff. One of the takeaways that I would love for us to hear is even with all the science of the gut and everything, the one thing that kind of got me a little is that how we can affect our babies. So it's vitally important for us to take care of ourselves if we desire to have children, so that we can present the best package for the kid to grow in, for the baby to be nurtured in, so that there are so many things that for example, I have been morbidly obese all of my adult life, and all of my children were born by C-section. So that already put them at a disadvantage. Okay, and I don't say that in terms of a curse, because our God is faithful. But the thing of it is, if I had been thinking about being a carrier for the children, I may have made different sets of decisions. So ladies, as you're approaching your childbearing years, or just for your life yourself, take better care of yourself overall, which will indeed lead you to take better care of your gut. As you take better care of your gut, by the time you're making breast milk, you're able to give your child a quality product. The mere fact that when Paula described the whole Rubik's Cube effect, to if the baby's sick, or if the baby's, sick as in, suppose they have a little cold, a little sniffles, that breast milk is going to give it exactly what it needs. But mom has to have a storehouse ready for this baby. The saliva in the baby's mouth, is that correct, Paula? Helps with what the baby signals to mom what it needs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's pretty unique. So there's a back and forth information sharing where, you know, the baby's saliva is going to communicate chemical signals back to the mom, and it'll send different messages and say reconfigure what this baby needs because it's not feeling well.
So are there things that or is it just the things that we're eating that kind of stirs this up to be a negative thing? I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, nope. So not just foods. So the food is one of the biggest influencers of our microbiome and our health in general, because like I said, because we only have that thin layer, one layer of cells. So think of like column, just like in a column like this. That's it. One layer between us and the world. So if you watch one of those war movies and you think about those soldiers standing there with their shields and they have like the first line of defense and then that's it. And then maybe way back you have like everybody else on the horses, ready to charge. That's kind of the same thing. There's just one line and they have their little shields there and that's it. And then way behind they have like all the immune cells. They can call them forth, but they're not at the front line. They're like, that's not what we do. We'll cause damage if we stay up there too long. We got to stay back here. And so food brings everything in. It brings toxins. It brings, not just the food product. It brings all these chemicals that our body has to decide, is this food? Is this friend? Is this foe? So it has to do all of that. But also things like sleep, stress. Those are hormones. They send signals. They send signals everywhere. They send signals to our gut, and our gut sends back information. Exercise, we talk about. So it's the lifestyle changes that we talk about all the time. I know people think, oh, I could hear that, but you need to understand like more of like on a molecular level what's going on, and that plays a role. So like every time I go for a walk, I think, oh, I'm changing my gene expression because I'm changing how my body's utilizing glucose and all these things. And so this is why those things are important. So sleep, eliminates stress, the environment that we're in, the toxins that we're around. So, some of us, we live in areas where we're bombarded with either toxins in the air, toxins in our environment, what we called allergens. So different things, mice, roaches, rats, whatever, all those different things produce allergen, dust mites. One of the models that we use for asthma in my lab is actually dust mites. And so we can use that to actually induce asthma in mice. And so these things do come in and play a role in our health. Yeah. So it's a lot of things that we can do. And so don't try to take on everything all at once. Just, little by little.
Paula, a few months ago, well, it's been a bit since the pandemic. I think that we were having a conversation about living closer to the ground, like farm to table, okay? But also just letting your kids play in dirt can be helpful to them. Now, everybody is a germaphobe, and we have hand sanitizers in all flavors of the rainbow now, and our children aren't allowed to get dirty anymore. You don't see kids crowded around a mud puddle playing, making mud pies and whatnot. What are some of the advantages of letting our kids play outside?
Yeah, that's a good one. So my supervisor actually wrote a book called "Let Them Eat Dirt," and he was on Good Morning America. I think he's scheduled to be on there again sometime this fall. And his name is Dr. Brett Finley. So if you see him, that's my supervisor. Great guy. But so basically, what's happened is that we've seen over the last couple of decades that as we've become more hygienic, so we've become more clean in our environment, we've begun to be able to track like autoimmune disease and these allergic diseases over time. And it happened so rapidly that it was like, okay, it can't be due to genes because the changes has happened too fast. And so what we've attributed to, or research have shown then, is that it's attributed to the change in our microbiome. So we've become too clean. We needed to, centuries ago because we were being, our lifespan was very short because of just very simple diseases would just take us out. And so we need antibiotics. But now we've gone too far the other way. So we clean everything. And so there is a benefit of us letting kids play in the soil. The soil has its own microbiome, not just a farm. Don't go to a farm unless it's like an organic farm because they're going to have pesticides. But your backyard, if you're not spraying it with any pesticides, let them go out there. Having pets, actually, children in households with pets seem to have lower rates of allergies and asthma. Children who have siblings also have the same. So if you are single child and you didn't have any pets, you're kind of out there by yourself. So getting out into the environment increases your exposure to bacteria. And so that's one of the concerns we've had during COVID because the increased use of hand sanitizers, because we need to, washing our hands, but also people aren't getting together anymore. People aren't going to the park. And so the exposure is less. So I imagine that in the next 10 years or so, we're going to begin to see some diseases emerge from as a result of the pandemic.
So Paula, you're telling me it's good that I had 3 snotty nosed kids in the house. That's what you're telling me right now.
Right. Yeah, if you just only have that
They're
one,
all doing like this at the same time, and they're just spreading it all around. And this is a great thing because it's good for our immunity.
it's good for everybody. If you only had the one C-section baby, you'd still be like, "Oh my God, we're at the hospital every 2 weeks." But she had some siblings, and so she was able to get a little bit of that. And some of these things, we're looking at how can we rebalance the microbiome, how can we reset all of these things, and there are a lot of things that we can do clinically. We call them repopulate basically, because we're trying to get the bacteria back in, but there are some things that we can do that I can talk about as well.
So Paula, one more question for me. A lot of people tell you that taking these like probiotics helps with the bacteria in your gut. Probiotics, prebiotics, biotics, it's so many of them that you go in the store and there's a whole shelf and there's 15 biotics, 15 million and 15 million cultures in this one and 10 million cultures in this one, and you grab all of them because somebody says you should take them. Is this a good thing for us to do, is my question.
Good question. So probiotics. Okay, so I think for the industry practice is a little bit further ahead than the science to support it. First of all, they're just a little bit more. It seems that way. People get a little thing in the news and then they go in and make a business out of it, and then the consumer is kind of left holding the bag. Not the money bag because we put the money out, but we can get all the stuff. And so there's not a lot of evidence right now to support all of these probiotics that we see on the shelf. There are some companies that are doing more clinical trials looking at their probiotics. And so one of the things, if you're going to buy a probiotic, try to find it from a company that can tell you, even on their website, that they've done some research, because a lot of these probiotics they take are like the lactobacillus are from the vagina. Well, it's, that's this natural environment. And now you're trying to put it in the gut. It's not going to do anything. A lot of them don't stay. Like I said, there are trillions of microbes there. So even if it's a good one trying to come in, they're like, hey, where are you trying to go? There's a trillion of us here. Like, you can't come in here. We don't have no food for you. We don't have no space. We got this community set up. Like, go on somewhere. Go and make yourself away all the way down to that anus and exit. Bye. And so, you have that going on. But what we're also looking into is like, maybe they don't need to, what we call colonize. Maybe don't need to like set up their own tents. Maybe just them passing through can also have a benefit. But what we find is that if people stop taking probiotics, the benefits also leave. And so it's not sustainable. Prebiotic is different. Probiotic is basically a live bacteria product. And so I only buy probiotics if it's like in the refrigerator at the store. I won't buy it if I see it on the shelf because, the bacteria, it's not, it doesn't live forever like that. So I'm a little bit different in that way. Just how we grow bacteria in the lab. And so that's kind of how I think about it. And then whereas prebiotic isn't a microbe at all. Prebiotic is basically food for your microbes, for the probiotics. So prebiotics help them grow. So that's why we always talk about, so fiber is a prebiotic. And so you can get your fiber from like asparagus, chicory root, bananas, avocado. What are some of the others? I wrote some of them. Jerusalem artichoke is a really good one. Leeks, raspberries. So you try to eat more of these fiber with water, because fiber will cause you to be constipated. Because remember I said about the smaller part of the last part of the small intestine takes the water. And so by the time it makes it to the colon, there's no water in the food, right? So it's going to be dry. So that's kind of what's happening when you see it gets to the colon. You're like, it's so packed here because the small intestine has done its job and it's pulled out the water. So so you need to have this fiber, and this fiber then will promote the growth of probiotics bacteria in your gut. So that's the best way to get them to grow. And then that way they're growing naturally. They're growing from species that are already in there. And so they're already in the environment and they're trying to make a new home. They're not trying to come in and nuclear on the block, trying to set up tent. They're already there. So you want to promote them to grow, I always try to think of them as little people. So then that way people can relate to it a little bit more as they're thinking.
That's true. Tammy, I don't want to end without what you were telling me at the beginning about our spiritual gut, because that is really important to go with what Paul is talking about right now. We do this channel for women, but we care about your spiritual and your natural. So if you could share with us what you were telling me before we came on, I would greatly appreciate it. I think somebody's going to be blessed.
Part of uh, well, this is totally balanced, okay? Because we have the natural and then we have the supernatural, okay? A few months ago, I was having some brain fog stuff, okay? And I was talking to Paula about it, and she gave me a simple remedy, and it was for me, for Tammy, it was to get rid of glutens, no white bread, no potatoes, starches, stuff like that, okay? And in days, and I mean 3 or 4 days, I was like, oh my goodness, I feel like, okay. And I began to pray about that because I didn't want to be trapped by this, okay. But the word of God in Philippians 3:19 says, their end is their destruction, their God is their belly, and their glory is in their shame. Their minds are set on earthly things. And see, a part of that is straight take me to church, but the other part is what we're seeing now. That, for example, we see a whole generation of girls who were dieting because they were told what is beauty. And so then they begin to deprive themselves, and you found out that these girls were malnourished, even though they were beautiful, they were models, but they were incredibly malnourished because they were depriving their bodies of it. Then you got another group where whatever they feel like they want to do, I got a gut feeling that I want to go here and do that, and that's what you do. And so now your gut, how you feel, the second brain, come on now, the second brain becomes your God. Whatever makes this gut feel good, even though there's an innate right or wrong already here that God already put in us. God already tagged us with the we know right from wrong, but our gut has become our God now. And whatever we feel like, so then you that's why you see the fad diets. Yep. Because they're trying to massage this thing in their gut while still maintaining this felt beauty. But the thing of it is, you're not concerned about what will really please your body. And see, there are simple things. I remember talking with Paula. We were talking about eating closer to the ground, and no, that doesn't mean take your plate and lay down on the ground and eat. But we're talking more farm to table, organic foods, and stuff like that. And it took my body a little while to kind of get used to it, okay, because I had to develop a taste for it. And believe you me, I'm not a fast food junkie, not at all. But I had to learn how to enjoy those foods. And me putting a piece of asparagus in my mouth did not make me think mashed potatoes and gravy. No way, it didn't. But I had to understand this is good for me, and that's what I had to say. That's what I had to feed myself and myself so that I could be healthy. So that's how you step away from those things. You step away from those earthly things that can damage you. That can damage you. For my birthday, I decided to give me. So I went and got lab work done. I went and got my mammogram done. I went and got x-rays done. And I'm getting the results that, Tammy, you're not really unhealthy. You just eat too much of the wrong foods in the wrong combinations. So, since the end of April, I have lost 49 pounds. I don't know if you can see it. I can't see it, whatever. But yes, thank you, God. But the thing of it is, I wasn't really trying because I took Paula's advice, and begin to just change little things. Okay. I love a good sandwich, especially if it's something with a bone in it. I love it. Okay. But I've learned to pick differently when I eat. Fortunately, I live in a rural area, so I can get more farm to table stuff. I can get that. And I'm learning to enjoy it. I'm learning to enjoy having a mixture of broccoli and cauliflower instead of that lovely ugh, mashed potatoes and gravy with my chicken, So I've learned how to do that. I was also educated on how to know if your foods are organic, certified organic, and whatnot. Where I live, I can talk to the actual farmer that grew the foods, but in many cases we don't have that. So learn to read labels. the law of first mention tells you what's most in that food. So when you see high fructose corn syrup, I slide it right back on the shelf, because for me, that just doesn't work for me, and I end up with this brain fog. And that's when I really became enamored with the fact that what I was eating, the food that I enjoyed, was hurting me. And when I stopped doing it, I began to feel better. I began to think better. I began to put two thoughts together quicker. And it's not that I was crazy or demented, but I just felt better.
So what you're telling me then is that because we get potatoes. I mean, potatoes are like your natural. Let's get a potato. You know, when you grow up, they say a starch, a vegetable, and a meat. But
Yep.
by cutting out the starch, and then we need to make sure, because this has been one of my things, is making sure that stuff is organic or not. So you go in the store and there are 50 spinach, different types of spinach right there. One's in a bag, one's open, got a couple different brands of spinach. But now I need to look and see if it's certified organic on the bag. All
Okay.
right, did I get that right?
Yeah.
Paula,
Paula.
you're muted.
Yeah, I want to add a few things too, because buying organic is very expensive too. So, but there are some things that you can do. So there environmental working group. So this is the group that basically looks at it studies pesticides in food, and so they're called the environmental working group, and they have this thing called the Dirty Dozen and the 15 Clean. So the Dirty Dozen are and they do this reassess this every year. So these are the 12 foods that they consider these are heavily pesticides. They're heavily sprayed. Do not You must buy these organic if you're going to avoid ingesting these. And then there's a 15 clean, where they're like, these are the 15 fruits and vegetables that are not sprayed, or that even if sprayed, it doesn't penetrate to the fruit inside. And so if you wash off all of that, you're fine. And so I usually use that to for people who are starting out, because buying this stuff is expensive. So you can start with that. So it's called the Environmental Working Group. You can Google it, the Dirty Dozen. If you Google Dirty Dozen, you'll see it. 15 clean. And they also have an app that you can use, that you can check even your things like deodorant. So I only use natural deodorant because of the chemicals that come in. It comes into, you have a lot of different ducts and stuff under your arms, but that's a whole different conversation we can talk about. But so you want to look at yes, environmental working group. So you want to use that as a guide when you go into the stores to help you shop. Traditionally, the food guide pyramid that we had, which then they got sued and they had to change it because it was heavily biased towards one industry versus the other. And so they came out with this thing called My Plate. They got sued again for some other things because they kept on putting the dairy there, when a large proportion of the United States population, African Americans and Hispanic, are lactose intolerant. We just don't possess that gene to break down this dairy. And then so it's interesting that we have this dairy bin in infant formula. So you see the connections, that we're just bombarded with this stuff, and you have to make these decisions. And so, so when you go to the store and you see all these choices, try to go for, like Tammy said, as close to the ground as possible. So instead of the frozen spinach, if you can get the fresh spinach, get the fresh one. You can get it fresh and then freeze it, because then at least you know the expiration date on it. Like, okay, I got this fresh, and so it's pretty new. Versus if it's in the freezer, it could have been 6, 7, 8 months ago. That has been in the freezer. And so you have no idea, the nutrients leaches after over time. So if you buy it fresh, then you can freeze it. You can also buy, there are farms who do like biodiversity kind of, or bioenergetic kind of farming. So basically they don't get certified organic because it's a very expensive process, but they may grow their foods in a very organic way where they don't spray. And what they do is they rotate the soil where they plant stuff. And so they do that during the year to kind of keep the soil fresh, to keep the nutrients in. And so you might find it at your local farmers market, where they can tell you that, no, we don't use any spray, but we can't afford, we're a small farm, we can't afford to get certified as organic. So there's a lot of different ways that you can put these together so that it's more feasible and economically sensible.
Now, how we eat affects our microbiome in our stomachs. Is that correct? So changing our diet can help that process. Am I right? Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes, no, you're right. And one of my favorite scriptures, around food is and health is 3 John 1:2. Beloved, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. And I think for us as Christians, we need to really understand that how we treat this temple is going to be how God can use us. Like, we don't want to be disqualified. We don't want, when it's time for us to go somewhere, God is sending you, like, well, I can't go because I got to be on this kidney dialysis next week, and so I can't go anywhere. So we have the option, to take care of our health, to restore our health, so that we can be meat for the master. You sanctify this body, submit it, fast, pray, do these things. God set a guard to my mouth, change my desires for my appetite. Like, he made us. You don't think he can change our taste buds? Surrender. We can surrender all these things. God, when you say I sanctify my body, made it meet for the master use, that means my taste buds, that means my eye gaze, the things that I look at that I think, I really want that. And then one of the things that I've noticed, in myself, and there's probably research to support this as well, as you change your diet, your appetite changes. So the cravings will go away. I started doing intermittent fasting about 2 weeks ago, and I love potato chips, I'm going to tell you. And this my weakness. And I have not wanted a single potato chip. I can walk by and see it. It's on the table looking at me like, girl, did you want something? I'm like, I'm good to go. I'll go ahead and get this pretzel or some of these bell peppers. And also, if there's something, how to encourage your kids to eat healthy. One of the things I do, and sometimes I post on Instagram, I'll just make a huge platter of vegetables. I cut up purple cabbage, cucumber, red bell pepper, orange bell pepper, and I just put it on the table, and I don't say anything. I just leave it there. Within an hour, that's gone, all of it. And I don't say anything. I don't encourage them. I don't ask them. I just lay it out there. But kids will eat it because they see it. They like to munch, especially during the pandemic. They don't have nothing else to do. They like to eat. So you can change the environment and what's available to them. So that's a little mom hack that I want to pass on.
Hey, we love hacks as we go along. These that help you, especially with the kids, because as we know, a lot of our children are now overweight, and it's because what we buy for them that is advertised is not good for them. So they want what's advertised that they see, but it's not necessarily healthy for them. So hey, if you got any more tips, go and put them out there, because this is a women's channel, and most of us have kids that we are trying to keep away from the Cheetos and the Funyuns and that stuff, because that is the stuff that is advertised that this
exactly.
is
Yeah, don't buy them. And I think another thing for us is that we don't have a TV. And people are like, oh, I know. I have 5 kids and we don't have a TV. We haven't had a TV in about 8 years. And Tammy was almost about to die when she came here. Like, I don't have a TV. I gotta go to see my TV. I was like, you have to rock yourself. I said, but there ain't gonna be no TV. And so we don't have a TV. So my youngest son, who's 8, is he only sees the TV if he goes to somebody's house, but he's never seen that. So we have a projector that we use now, that we bought 2 years ago, and we watch, Netflix. So there's no commercials. So then they're not influenced by any of this stuff. So they don't know any of this. Like, their Funyuns, they'd be like, what is that? Because they just don't see it. And so limit the stuff that they're watching, because that influences them. Our brain, is very powerful images. We can't set when they're going to replay. And so they're always there. They influence. Like I said, there's a connection between our gut and our brain through the vagus nerve. And so that's going to send messages to your microbiome. This looks really good. You should try it. And then your microbiome send more, and you're going to have that strong desire. Put out these platters, leave them out. Purple cabbage is really good. Try to get a lot of colors. Don't just go for the normal things that people talk about. Carrots, especially the little baby chubby carrots things. Get whole carrots. Cut them up yourself. Get some of those little things that you can have, like spirulina. What's it called? Not spirulina. Yeah, spirulina. Is that what they're called? They're little sterilizer. Get some of those little things that you can cut up vegetables in very different shapes. That's fun. And then kids, and get them involved, and they're like, oh, this is really fun. And you put that out there, and then they can eat it. So, I would definitely, you need any tips on that I have, like I said, 5 kids, they're all healthy. and they love vegetables. They eat sushi. They eat weird things like seaweed. I keep telling them if they go around people when they were young, if I gave them a cupcake, they would lop off the frosting, put the frosting in the trash, and they would eat the cake. And I was like, if you go around people, they're gonna think you're strange because that's not what they do. But they just were like, "This, what is this?" And they hated it, you know. And so, but there, I purposely did that. So there were things that I did when I was pregnant, when I was nursing. You know, Tammy was here. She saw I would make all the food myself and squeeze them in those little tubey things. But now they have those. You can buy them. They didn't have them when I made it. And so it was just the different things that we can do to help our children. And it's also going to help them, their cognition. One of the things that we see a lot in my research with malnourished children is that they have a lot of learning disability or disadvantages, and it's because of their malnutrition. It's because the nutrients aren't being shuttled to their brain, because the body is very selfish. When it's in a starvation mode, like during this developmental period, it calculates and makes some decisions, and it's like, you know what, brain is not really that important to me. Linear growth is not important to me. I can defer that to later, but I need to make blood. And so it'll shuttle the nutrients that it needs to making those things and certain vital organs, but it will just ignore some of the other things. And so it kind of redirects it. So you'll see, you know, they have cognitive disabilities, and you see they have problems learning, and then they can't catch up. And then you see also with growth, once it's set in, doesn't even go. Lana said she loves seaweed. Seaweed is really good. You can put it in everything. You put it on sandwiches. I used to put it on my kids' sandwiches. So yeah, so there's a lot of things you can do to kind of reset your microbiome and your health, and start with your children.
Yes.
And don't let them be the boss. You're the boss. You're the one buying. You're the one buying. You know, they're
not working on the boss thing, because kids will take over if you give them 2 seconds.
And it's like, you're not important. That's what we're eating right now.
But ladies, this may surprise you. We have been on for 50 minutes. Oh my goodness. We've been on for 50 minutes, and our time is coming to an end. This has been such a great conversation. We have to do it again. I'm telling you. Before we end, I would like each of you to give us some words to share with the audience, some words on things that they can do, or whatever comes to your heart, and then we'll close out. We'll start with Tammy, Paula, and then we'll end. Okay?
All right.
Tammy, it's on you.
It's on me. When you eat, consider what the outcome is going to be, and I'm not just talking about on the toilet. I'm talking about how your body feels. Pay attention to what foods mess you up. Pay attention, really, if that Chinese joint still think about that. And so that's what I picked up, especially from today. So thank you for this whole session. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. I was muted for a second there.
I love Tammy. I'm telling you.
Paula, can you give us a few words before we end?
Yeah, you know, baby steps. Make these changes to your diet in small increments. You are in control of what your kids eat. Don't think that they're not gonna. I've never seen a child starve themselves to death based on the food that you present, and you can change that trajectory. And then also, it just, you know, just keep in mind that as you're making these changes, like Tammy said, think about the outcome, that this is for life. Don't just try to eat for now, try to eat for life, and try to eat for your generations. And that's another subject I can go into about the genetic part of it. But think about, you know, the future of your children. Think about the future of you. Do you want to be around to see grandkids? Then you need to eat and sow into that.
Yes. So we're at 53 minutes. I don't want to stop talking. I'm just going to tell you guys, this has been such a great conversation. I have so many more questions right now, and I'm going to write them down so I can ask you later, Paula. I'll text them to you.
Yeah, and if there's any questions that come in from this live, you know, send them to me and Tammy, and we'll be happy to respond.
And that was my next question. How do everyone get you guys? I know you have Titus 2 on Instagram. They probably can send questions too.
Yeah, also Sister in Science on Instagram, where I do most of my science communication. And so feel free to send messages there as well.
Sister in Science on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. And I talk a lot about all these stuff, like all the time. Breast milk, breastfeeding. I'm working on something right now. I should post on Monday maybe about breast milk.
I'm trying to I'm trying to type and talk, and sometimes we can do one thing at a time. 8 a.m. Okay, so let's see. Sister in Science on Instagram, correct?
Sister, actually, SISTA.
Oh, see, you made it. You made it funky.
Science.
So now we gotta go back and make it funky. Okay. Good stuff.
My husband actually came up with that.
All right. That's it right there. Sister and Science. Now, Tammy, I think we have put yours up so much, but I'm gonna say them anyway. I don't have them in this particular live. I don't have them listed, but I know we are Nurse Tammy R. Saunders on Instagram.
Nurse
Tammy,
Tammy R. Nurse Tammy
Nurse
R on Instagram.
oh,
Tammy R. Saunders on Facebook. And of course, Titus 2 on Instagram and Clubhouse.
okay. See, I'm glad I got you to say it because I was messing it up. See, that's the good part. Now I have to tell everyone these ladies are phenomenal. They have a group on Clubhouse called Titus 2 and Sound Doctrine. And it is amazing. It is amazing. I don't want to say what the schedule is because we were on Friday and you guys said the schedule is going to change, so I don't want to set people up. But they also have Titus 2 and Sound Doctrine on Instagram. And if you want to know what's going on with Titus 2, go to Instagram. It's always updated, and you will get all the information there. Did I cover everything, ladies? I have enjoyed today. I have enjoyed this conversation. It's so nice to meet you, to see you face to face, Paula. I've talked to you, but I've never seen you. So this was great. Tammy, I see you all the time, but I love you. You know that. This has been a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful session. Very informative. We must do it again. I will tell you, Paula, Tammy can affirm this, that if I say we must do it again, we will definitely do it again. This information is so important, especially for our community.
Yeah.
Our community has not had they just haven't been informed on this. So we do feed our kids wrong. We do eat wrong, and we don't understand how our microbiome works in our stomach. And so all we do is put on the pounds. We get dialysis because as you get through ages, they give you that dialysis. We're on so many medications because the doctors give us so many medications every time we go. And this information can help us to live the healthy life that God intended for us to live. Because that's what we want to do. We want to live the healthy life that He intended for us to live. I thank you both. I thank you. I honor you guys. And to everybody else, tune in next time. We will be back with What's in Your Gut. What's in your gut? Think about it. Think about it and make a change. God bless you, and you have a wonderful, great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Lydia.
You're welcome.